TV, welcome back. We have a packed day. As I mentioned earlier on previous episodes, we just had our Startup Leaders Club talk to us all about the business model, what business models are, how business models are changing, how to build them, what advice to have, and how they all apply to the new normal. And very crucial topic that we mentioned during that episode was how new technologies or deep technologies or infrastructure technologies, as we've referred to them, play a role in those changing business models. Now that plays into today's episode. Every day here on VCTV, we talk about what's happening in different industries and different technologies, how they intersect, where they intersect, how they affect your products, services, industries, regions, and everything else in the world, along with where the investments are or are not going, where the opportunities are to build, to invest, and really what the heck is happening as things are changing so dramatically and quickly. Today, we've been building up all week and really almost 2 weeks now around deep technologies and what those mean and apply. And today we're going to be talking about two of my favorite subjects, and I've brought together some of the best and brightest friends and family around the world to talk about that, and that is fintech and blockchain and everything in between. So don't fear, we're going to get into all of it. We're going to stay away from cryptocurrency prices, but I'm sure digital currencies and assets are going to come up as we've got some of the greatest minds in the business who have joined us as well from around the world. And if you don't know what's going on, I want to throw a few headlines to you just real quick because this is a very important topic. If you don't think it is, give me a second. One, Visa. Ever heard of it? Big company. They are now in the process of looking at hiring multiple roles for building distributed applications or dApps. Interesting. Volvo, Mercedes, both investing in companies building in the blockchain space around track and trace and supply chain. Interesting. G20, heard of it? It's a big governmental organization and council that is now focused on laying the groundwork to how digital payments will be accepted around the world, which plays into central bank digital currencies, which plays into digital currencies, and where that goes in the future of digitizing our fiat currencies around the world, something governments are looking at on a day-to-day basis, trying to figure out what the hell this all means, how it's going to impact our businesses, how it's going to impact our services, and the way that we sell, the way that we transact, and the way we interact with people, both online, offline, and in new virtual worlds and economies that are being set. Still don't think that's enough? Here's something else. Didi, one of the largest mobility and transportation companies, is testing these central bank digital currencies or digital currencies in China. China's blockchain service network has rolled out. We're going to get to that. Also, Deloitte recently dropped their 2020 blockchain survey as they go and talk to some of their biggest customers and executives around the world. Guess what? Blockchain is in the enterprise. Everyone says it's not, it is. Right now, over 55% of organizations and their top executives, we're talking the C-level suite, see blockchain as a relevant piece of their organization's infrastructure as a critical top 5 priority strategically for the success and growth of their business. And without it, not going to happen, not going to exist. And over 85% of those executives see a compelling business case for blockchain within their organization. Let all that sit in. And with that, I'm Kyle Eckhart, your host. Welcome to VCTV, talking about fintech and blockchain. Super excited to have you. Thank you, Elena, and the entire LA Token team for bringing VCTV to your screens all around the world. Very excited to welcome our guests, and thank you to our audience. If you like today's episode, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We'll all be available afterwards online. It's not like a normal conference where you got to fight to battle to get to us. We're all available. Happy to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. Drop them in the box. We'll do our best to answer them in real time. If not, we'll get to them in the end, or again, reach out to us. Now, taking too much time, without further ado, let's introduce our panel. Irina, welcome back. I haven't seen you in what feels like about 36 hours, as we've been talking a lot about your experience in this space, but also in the bigger, broader industries of deeper technologies. Welcome back to the show. A little introduction, a little background on yourself.
Thank you. It really, truly been pleasant experience to be a guest here for you, and it's just been wonderful to be, to be part of these panels. You're doing a great job gathering so many bright minds from all over the world. So I miss that from traveling and speaking at the conferences. So thank you. My name is Irina Lichf. Many know me as a crypto superwoman. I am a president of Lumeria. It's a platform dedicated to creation of space as an asset class. I am a founder of Blockchain Cubed. It's a blockchain consulting firm, financial integration specifically. I'm advisor on number of companies, Space Fund, ProChain Capital, and several others. And of course, Ape Global Securities Exchange. And it's my pleasure to be here and talk about this exciting topic.
Wonderful. And we're excited to have you back. And Jean-Marc, welcome to the show for the first time. Pleasure to have you. Same to you. Introduction, a little background on yourself.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to you, and thanks for the host. So I'm Jean-Marc Bonnefou. I founded Taylor & Capital in 2007 after a long and eventful career in investment banking and derivatives in London and New York. Taylor & Capital has been running strategies and hedge fund strategies in commodities, and more recently, over the last half a dozen years, investing into technology, deep tech, and venture into early stage blockchain companies. And at the same time, I'm advising a number of those blockchain and AI companies, help them to go to market, and most importantly, trying to work on the connect between the old world of investment banking and the new world carried by this technology. And that's kind of my overarching theme in this sector.
Wonderful. And again, welcome to the show. Damien, are you with us? We may have lost Damien, but we will be back to you. Diego, welcome to the show as well. A little intro, a little background on yourself.
Hi, Kyle. Thanks for having me. I'm Diego. I'm the CMO at Young. Young is a new cryptocurrency exchange based in Italy. We launched the product at the end of 2019. So now we have 7 months of life. And during this 7 months, we were able to grow our user base in Italy. And soon we are going to launch our Young Platform Pro, which is the pro version of the exchange. I'm in the crypto blockchain space since 2014. And I'm also advisor for other fintech company, other fintech startups, and in the space. And so it's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you. Also excited to kind of hear a little bit about what's happening in Italy, as we know that a few months ago, Italy became a very big, interesting area of topic around digital currencies and what that might mean. So excited to kind of dive into that as well. And Damien, I see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear. You're in the desert, but we appreciate you joining in. As Irina said, it's great to bring all of us together in these unique ways as we hadn't before on panels, but never before have I had a panel with someone in the desert join us live. So this is a first for us here on VCTV, but welcome to the show. Wow. A little intro, a little background on yourself.
Thanks so much. Yes, I'm in the desert of Arizona and Utah in front of Monument Valley, celebrating the 18th birthday of my son, who just got admitted at his college in London.
Congratulations.
So, a great place. That said, I'm participating in this fascinating event. So a very quick background on myself. I've been in fintech for the last 25 years. I've been an entrepreneur 3 times, building 3 fintech companies. The 3 were sold, especially my second one was sold to Ingenico, was called Rome. And then the third one, Loop Pay, was sold to Samsung to create Samsung Pay. And most recently, I was involved also in another mobile payment company that been fairly successful, and been launching a fund, Connexo Ventures, focusing at a lot of fintech startups from South Europe that deploy in Latin America and US. So very niche, but super tech companies that we find in Spain and Portugal. One of our advisors is, an investor, is the CEO of Fidze. You probably heard, this is the #1 cybersecurity company that moved from Portugal to the US, building all the cybersecurity blocks of the major banks in the world. And more recently been fairly involved in a startup called Hamilton Fintech, who just launched a blockchain generated investment vehicle that is fully certified in an exchange right now in the Seychelles, but coming up to the world. So learning more and more around blockchain and digitalization of assets. So happy to contribute. Made a few, my last investments at Connexo Ventures were all fintech, cybersecurity, neobank called bnext, and also a Stripe-like company called Kushki from Ecuador that has been processing close to $1 billion in transaction since inception. So doing well. So happy to help if I can.
I think you will have plenty to contribute, and we do love your background. Elena and I were just talking about how it's the most realistic Zoom background we've seen on the show. So as long as you can keep your camera on, keep it. It's a beautiful sight.
It's going to be about the heat. It's getting close to 100 degrees, so I don't know. You'll have the background for more than 10 minutes. But
well, don't exhaust yourself. We got plenty to talk about here. And with that being said, I want to welcome the Grand Master, the one and only, the chief architect of all things digitization. I'm giving him that title. He did not give that to me as his intro. That's mine and mine alone. Alex, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. For those that don't know you, which I feel is very few, but a little intro and a little background on yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having us again. Not sure I deserve the title, but I'm old enough to have been around when the internet just got started. I got to work on the voice over IP. I wrote the original protocols and patents back in 1994. And so it's like an amazing journey seeing, 4.5 billion people use it every day, right? It's just one of the largest decentralized applications that still remain on the internet. And so when I came across Bitcoin and decentralization as the movement, I got excited. And more recently, after 7 other startups decided, I convinced my wife to allow me to do number 8. We have 6 kids at home, and I have more startups than kids. So it's like definitely an overachiever here. And Celsius is trying to solve a really simple problem that became a global problem, which is interest income. If you go back 20 or 30 years, it was common to earn interest on your money everywhere around the world. And no matter what bank you used or what saving accounts you had with mutual fund or community bank or anything like that, you earned interest. Today, not just that individuals can't earn interest, but also the world's largest institutions and pension funds are struggling with returning any positive yield to their stakeholders. So what Celsius built is basically a new way of earning yield, which is designed for the people. Our slogan is do good and then do well. So our focus is to deliver as much value as possible to the depositor, to the user of the service, which unfortunately become the opposite of what banks and other people do, right? Most of the value today is extracted from the depositor and is given to the shareholder. So Celsius now has just over 135,000 users worldwide. We crossed $1 billion in deposits, and we've done close to $10 billion in loans. and we just raised $17 million. Half of it came from Tether as our lead investor.
Congratulations on the recent success. And Damien, again, congratulations to your son on the recent acceptance and birthday as well. And, team, I want to kind of start right there off Alex's note and kind of dive into the current state of things. Where is FinTech? Where is FinTech changing and going? Blockchain, where is the current state of this? I think this is a good question to just kind of begin with, because too much is happening to dive into one topic just yet. Too many things are changing every minute, every day. We've had a number of big headlines made over in the past week alone, in the past 24 hours. Nonetheless, what is the current state as we look forward and ahead of where these technologies and where these industries are? And Irina, I want to start with you and kind of where is the current state of FinTech and blockchain today as well?
Luckily, it is in a space where we've been hoping for it to be for many, many years. In my opinion, we now have a really great track record of understanding this technology. Regulators now feel comfortable with that. And I think that's very, very important step toward implementation, because almost everything that has been built is kind of outside of legislations, right? So it's built, our industry has been built, blockchain industry has been existing in almost a gray area, and a lot of hurdles and negative kind of problems that came out of it, and bad reputation follows it. And so luckily, we really have been able to observe that distributed ledger technology does work, and regulators do understand it. And so now we finally at the point to where we can use it to integrate it into, for example, creation of global capital markets, right? So elimination of number of intermediaries is feasible, and in fact, regulators really like this technology because they don't have to guess. It's kind of a godsend for them, if you would, right? And I talked about it in my keynote on LA Token on VCTV just maybe several days ago. So that's kind of to understand better what that means is from there. And most importantly, a lot of financial technology companies are now understanding that in order for them to stay relevant and for them to progress, they must understand and implement this technology.
Absolutely. And Jean-Marc, to you, same question. Where are we with the current state of FinTech and blockchain technologies?
So I think, I mean, the way I see the journey for FinTech and blockchain is actually the convergence play, right? I can see that there's been good inroads in what I call FinTech 1.0, which is mostly about the UX UI. It's about mostly the delivery part of the experience to the user. But what hasn't really been tackled fully yet is the below the stack, lower down in the stack, the infrastructure level. And that's where I can see that what I call FinTech 2.0, I can see a model where these really great efforts, great delivery in terms of the UX UI, the mobile applications can be joined up with the peer-to-peer promises of the blockchain and kind of deliver what some call DeFi or CeFi, I mean, depending what your jargon you want to use, but something a little bit more holistic in a way that you go peer-to-peer also in the infrastructure rails, payment rails, messaging rails, and not just a sexy GUI to sell more effectively adoption. So that's kind of the thesis, and we're looking into companies and projects that kind of join up the two to bring that kind of modular architecture to the so-called FinTech 2.0 as we see it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we've seen a number of projects at the infrastructure level really start to take off. But UI, just a basic UI and that onboarding, offboarding, there's only a few that have really started to master it as well. And for the most, it's a pretty website very templated website. If you don't know the recipe, we can all write it for you in about 5 minutes here. But it is something you need to go deeper, right? It needs to bring that whole experience possible as well. And I think you're really hitting it for the future of fintech and banking. I mean, what Alex mentioned, it's got to be easy. It's got to be stupid simple, or keeping it stupid simple, as Gary says here on our episodes, the KISS method. Really has to be easy for people to use, but on the infrastructure, the back end, it's got to be well thought out.
Yeah, the
and can't just
infrastructure is
be,
not an easy, it can't be easy, because we're dealing with really complicated, hard issue here of atomic settlement on RTGS rails. We're looking at really something that is not precisely something you can whip out with a few developers and a good sales force. It's really about re-engineering the payment rails, for instance. I think one of the core application that is needed, a core brick to build that new kind of financial system, should be a digital cash unit, right? A real wholesale regulated digital cash asset that can be the fluid to more kind of regulated type of DeFi applications. And that's not easy. That's super hard. It's a lot of regulation work, it's a lot of lawyers work. You need consortia. So that has to be done in order to unleash this potential.
well, and this is not a service. This is not a basic service. You're talking about billions of dollars. This is a currency, right, Alex? I mean, this is coming to you as, Alex has done, and his team has done $10 billion in transactions, and probably more than that, to be honest. That's not a small amount of money. DeFi alone, we've seen cross over 2 billion locked up in value around DeFi applications. This is not small pennies. That infrastructure, to your point, Jean-Marc, has to be sound. It has to be there to handle this. That's not even getting to the bigger topic we talked about in the beginning of, the idea of central bank digital currencies, or just digitization of our fiat and currency markets in general. You're right. This is not an easy task. It's also something that's not going to happen overnight. But Alex, to you, what are you seeing further on that, and just the current state of things? Is you're living and breathing and eating this just as much as all of us.
Sure. So I think it's what I call a 3-horse race. You have basically the crypto community, which is trying to build a new set of rails, which basically fintech has not managed to do in the last 30 years. If you look at most of the innovation in the fintech space, it all relied on the old infrastructure. And if you look at DeFi, or what Celsius is doing more on the CeFi side, that is relying on a completely different set of infrastructure. But that horse is competing with 2 other alternatives. One is Libra and other corporate solutions that are focused more on kind of middle of the road stable coins or variants of stable coins that are relying more on traditional infrastructure. And then the third horse is the government version, right? So you look at the Chinese government or the US government or what the European Union is thinking about. And those are not limited supply, meaning the United States digital dollar is not going to be like the Bitcoin with 21 million coins max, right? It's going to basically, you're going to be allowed to print as much as you want. So it does not take advantage of the most important piece of cryptocurrency, which is verified limited supply on the open blockchain, on an open ledger. So I'm a big believer in open systems, having kind of seen how the internet won against all the other networks, the ATM network and all the proprietary network that competed with the TCP/IP infrastructure. And I think that the community or the users are going to vote for that architecture versus sticking with a new version of the fiat system or giving the power to JP Morgan or to Facebook, which we've seen those things don't end well. So I'm hoping that the community will vote in the right direction with their pockets, with their wallets.
And we're going to see very soon, as you bring up JPM. I mean, for those that don't know, Singapore just came out and said they're about to commercially roll out their new payments platform, multi-currency payment platform. Talk about a mouthful. That has been led by JP Morgan. Tessimic was an investor, and then the Singapore government. I mean, they're skipping over. They've said CBDCs, so central bank digital currencies for everyone, and going right into this new payment process that they've rolled out around blockchain-based payments. So it's going to be very interesting, Alex, to your point, to see does that play a role? Do people really want to use that? Is that where they want to engage their money? And apparently they've been testing this for 5 years. So we're going to see now if this really comes out commercially, how that's affected. And sorry, Alex, go ahead and comment on that, as I saw you unmuted.
No, I'm just saying I agree with you. I think, again, unfortunately, sometimes what's easy or easier from a user interface and adoption wins. But what we've seen again and again is that too big to fail banks never act in the best interest of the depositor, of the community. And now we're talking about 7.5 billion people who they don't even understand that all this money printing, right? There's over $20 trillion worldwide that's been printed just since Corona started. That all of that is effectively eating away at their savings, eating away at what they earn every day. And none of these solutions that are going to come from government or from the corporate world are going to focus on solving the problem for the person who actually creates the dollar in the first place, right? There, when you work hard and you convert your time into income, that's where all the value, that's where GDP is created. GDP is not created in the back office of JP Morgan, and definitely not with the Fed or some other printing press in the basement. So what I think we're missing in this creation is really, again, bringing the power back to the people, just like we did with Voice of IP. We took the power away from AT&T, from Deutsche Telekom, from the KDD in Japan, and so on, and brought it back to the people so we can have this conversation and not pay anything for it. It's free.
Yeah, although, Alex, if I may just interject, I think you can have your cake and eat it. I think you can have a competition between monies. You can have private monies, wholesale monies, public monies, and you can have different use cases using different kind of monies. This is, that to me, the phenomenal benefit of this technology, that you can create monies that fit with use cases and don't necessarily compete head to head like we've had for so long. So you could have multi-currency platform where central bank issue money. You can have a Libra private money. You can have stable coin. You can't have too many for each segment, but I can see an architecture of monies where different type of design will fit different use cases.
Yeah, we can have it. The question is what is going to be used. Today, 80% of all the transactions in the world are denominated in dollars. And if you look back at the last 2,000 years, you'll see that every 100 years or so, there was a dominant currency. If it was the pound, or if it was the Roman Empire had its own coin. So the problem is the dominant currency is the one that is dictating the technology, dictating the regulation, dictating everything else. And today, the question is really, are we at the end of the US dollar dominance, or is a digital dollar going to basically just extend the life of the dollar, no matter how much you print, for another 100 years, because it's going to be the easiest way for everybody to transact.
And that has a big dramatic effect on consumer behavior, and then also the products that we build and invest in as well, right? As entrepreneurs, we're looking to build for this space. How do you prepare and ready yourself for that? And as investors, where do we place our bets in this race? Because Alex pointed out there's kind of a 3-horse race, but there's many others in that same area, and they're just in different categories. So it's a very big question, something to think about. And we're going to come back on the investment side here shortly as well. But Diego, I want to come to you. I mean, same question around this is, what are you seeing as the current state of fintech and blockchain? I know you're based in Italy, and I want to come back specifically to that, but what are you seeing globally happening and shifting in this space?
Yeah, globally, I think that we've seen a rise in the digital payments. I think that the most important part right now that we have to be focused is the adoption, because we see that there are a lot of great services, DeFi services, CeFi services, great opportunity, but in my opinion, the big challenge that all the operator need to understand is that we need to increase the adoption, because otherwise it's impossible to create this real revolution. Because, for example, here in Italy, we have a lot of fintech startup, we have a lot of fintech interesting project. We see very amazing fintech project all over the world, but the problem is that if we are going to say the number of users that are now interested in this kind of a project, compared to traditional system, this number is still very, very small. So, and I don't understand, to be honest, I don't understand why, because now the UX UI of these apps is really, really great. For example, we have a lot of interesting opportunity, but a lot of people don't know that there are this kind of opportunities. For example, when I try to explain to someone that there are this opportunity connected to the blockchain industry, connected to the specific in the DeFi opportunity, such as Celsius, such as other competitor, people, they don't believe me, because they see, okay, it's impossible, because banks right now, they're offering 0.01% of interest, and it's not possible that someone is giving me that interest rate annually. So we need to do a lot of work to try to educate people and to try that. So for me, adoption and education are the two key words that we need to be more focused on.
Yeah, Diego is 100% right. I mean, what people miss is that the bank makes 15-16% with your money. How do you know? Look at their financial statements. They tell you exactly how much they earned and how much they paid the shareholder. So the fact that they don't pay you 7 or 8% on your money doesn't mean they don't make it, right? And it's very hard for people to understand that, because Celsius pays 80 times more than what your average bank pays in the United States. How is it possible? 80 times. That is because the banks are very greedy, not because Celsius is a magician.
It's very true. It's a proven use case. And Diego, before you comment real quick, I want to make sure Damien, in case we lose him with his wonderful live background, I want to make sure you get a chance to say, what is your current state and view?
A long response, so that should make sure, because I'm not going to be able to hold the whole thing. So I mean, what I'll do is give you kind of the latest on fintech and where is my thinking based on my latest startups and then latest investments, and then I'll talk to you very specifically around blockchain and one particular startups I'm been backing, which is Hamilton Fintech. So pretty much on the fintech side, and I'm going to take really what happened in the pandemic. We're really seeing, the first thing, if you go really on the payment side, we've seen number one, an acceleration of e-commerce. Formidable acceleration of e-commerce in some regions of the world where e-commerce was not growing as fast. Take, for instance, Latin America, where 18 million people have made their first e-commerce transaction in the month of April, with a Visa card. That was, essentially part of the Visa quarter report. But that was pretty amazing. I was very happy because I was, I'm an investor in Kushki. Kushki is essentially a platform like Stripe, but very focused at Latin America, that enables a company like Uber or like Cabify or like delivery services like Rappi to make a payment, e-commerce payment, whether in Chile or in Ecuador or in Mexico or in Brazil, the exact same way with the same type of fraud detection and success rate. So they are on course to process over $1 billion in transactions, formidable growth. So I mean, in a way, thank you for the pandemic. Although hopefully, because it's very serious in Latin America, we hope that it really will reduce in the next months. But you really see this move from physical commerce to e-commerce really accelerating all around the world, and especially in emerging markets. I've always also see the rise of a physical contactless payment transaction. So I was a founder of Lupe Samsung Pay. Samsung Pay, Apple Pay. We couldn't say it was a real success. It was a nice experience, but we've seen this accelerating around the world, and now people, if they don't have a contactless card, they pay with their phone, and so. Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, that were not a huge success. Finally people are getting it, and they want to pay. They don't want to insert a smart card and put their pin on the screen. So that I see this really interesting, the rise of contactless payment. Thirdly, I've seen people, the rise of mobile banking activities. I've seen that with my investment in Binext, which is the #1 neobank in Spain, but also now coming to Mexico to build a better banking experience and tackle 50% of the population that is unbanked. Neobanks are really finally taking off. We've seen in Brazil the success of Nubank that came up from nothing and built 20 million users with a $10 billion valuation in less than 5 years. That was Brazil, really targeting the unbanked, where we're hopefully seeing that in also now in Mexico. Huge market. Banks like Binext beating up incumbents like BBVA or Santander. Fairly interesting. I've seen also increase in fraud. With my investment in Buguru, which is essentially preventing people to hack your banking account. They monitor the sessions, and they've seen incredible type of hacks in banking sessions. But obviously, they're going around and protect the banks. So more sessions, more hacking, for sure, with digital banking. And last but not least, really we see I see a real movement towards digitalization of assets, and that's what I'm seeing with my involvement in Hamilton Fintech. It's essentially the first. It's a way very much like Celsius in a way, but it's essentially it's a blockchain fund that allow people to get over 10% return on investment on their assets, but all digitalized through a blockchain and into a regulated market. So surprisingly, this first regulated market that exists in the Seychelles, so in Africa. Africa is sometimes always in advance, and they're really going to go after the people who buy bitcoins, but in a far too volatile environment. And why would you invest in a bitcoin if there's 100% or 200% volatility? If you can get essentially what Hamilton has been doing, which is plugging ETF assets onto essentially kind of a blockchain and allowing it to investors from high net worth to very low end investors, the whole through a very simple user interface and a very simple KYC. So if I'm really getting into the subject, the theme of investment, asset investments, 95% of the population in the world today has still not had access to investing in assets. Only 5% of the population in the world. So it represents a huge opportunity. Of course, there have been platforms thanks to the internet in the year 2000 that have been very successful, obviously in the US, to allow people to buy and sell shares, and more recently, obviously, cryptocurrencies. In platforms like Robinhood and all these things, but with a pure will to try to make investments because of volatility. We see that people will want to use digital assets with more security and less volatility. That's what the Hamilton FinTech has been building. To be an alternative to, something like Bitcoin, which was part of the second revolution for me in investment in 2008. Very brilliant idea, but extremely energy. Consuming tons of energy for nothing. I think not where everything will finally go. Everything will go finally blockchain, disintermediated, but also with a willingness to invest very easily with very simple KYC processes to buy assets that will give you a return like a 10% type return, and that's what Hamilton is doing. They're targeting Middle East, Africa, and India, and I think this is where.
And Damien, you're bringing up a really good point. I apologize, but I want to make sure we get a few more answers in here. But thank you so much for that last point, because you're bringing this up as to Jean-Marc's points as well. As it's not just about the pretty GUI. It's also very much about the onboarding process as well, and KYC, know your customer. This is a subject we talked a little bit about around the idea of identity and digital
obviously, and AML, KYC, AML.
Yeah, and AML, thank you. And just the idea of identity and how identity plays a role in onboarding customers, because that is a friction point we've seen in the past. So Jean-Marc, I want to make sure you get a chance to comment on this. And then Irina, I'm coming to you as well.
Yeah, one of the fascinating space around all these nice efforts is the need for identity management and security around identity management, right? If you distribute the process at the edges of the network, you need to make sure the security is state of the art. And there are fascinating projects that are cropping up around this. You probably heard of things like MPC, multi-party computation, zero knowledge proof, and how can you use those very, very impressive cryptographic techniques to enable enterprise privacy, modular enterprise privacy on payment systems, or also on.
Real quick, Jean-Marc, apologies. Damien, can you go on mute real quick? It's a little bit of background noise. I apologize about that. Jean-Marc, sorry, continue.
Yeah, just so effectively try to bring those groundbreaking technology, research technology advances into the enterprise world. And it's still early days. Most of the cryptography used in enterprise is pretty antiquated. And I think that's a very interesting investment space here for VC to look at those new kind of protocols to secure the edge delivery of finance in the future.
And that brings up a very interesting intersection, and I want to come back to that because looking at other technologies and the future of connectivity, drawing things out to the edge around finance, this is actually a very important topic that many just brush off and we don't talk about very often. And Damien, again, if you could, please go on mute because there's a little bit of background noise. Thank you. And so Jean-Marc, I want to come back to that, but Irina, to you is kind of playing off what Jean-Marc said. It's there is a lot here, and as I talked about, identity plays a role in that. We go from the pretty interface and the deep infrastructure to there has to be something in the middle to make sure we're onboarding and offboarding. And with enterprises, as you commented, adoption's necessary. How are they seeing this from some of their end that you're talking about, being able to ease that adoption and ease that integration into their organizations?
Right. When I think about adoption, we often think, how do we reach that end consumer? And, how do we get them to understand this amazing technology? But we really don't need that. Our users do not need to know the complexities of our systems. What they need is to be able to just push that button and for magic to happen. That's all they really need to do. So I think one of the biggest questions we have right now is really understanding the technology. And I think that there are kind of two aspects to it. right? So when we talk about blockchain technology, we have centralized and we have decentralized. And those are completely different systems that you must build. And a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs that are coming into the industry, and they're building, let's say, solutions for integrating with a traditional banking system. They're using systems that are simply not going to be allowed by regulators, right? Because by nature, it just does not work. So we have to think about educating our developers and understanding, in understanding what infrastructure will actually work. I do hope that in the future, we will be able to really implement true distributed ledgers into traditional financial markets. However, it's not looking this way. And in order for us to integrate to traditional infrastructure, right now, regulators only understand centralized systems, right? Which to me, it's totally fine. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but we need to have a clear understanding and definition between what we are doing, because otherwise it's just kind of a playing in the mud and playing with this fancy word, which is blockchain, without really understanding what that means. And so to me, I think that the most important thing we can do right now is to empower regulators to feel comfortable with the definitions of what these different types of technologies mean, because then we can show them and demonstrate to them that actually you do want to make sure that your system at least anchored, right, into a decentralized systems, because otherwise it does not have those much needed security, right? It is much easier than to hack it. But a lot of companies are not doing that. They're confusing the industry, they're confusing the regulators, and they're confusing basically themselves with saying we are decentralized while they're completely centralized. And look, I'm not going to be pointing at any platforms. We all know who they are, and we know that they are not decentralized platforms. But you see, that confuses the regulators. And the regulators right now is the biggest bottleneck that's preventing us from adoption. We need them to clearly understand why, what, and how.
If I can interject, Irina, this is a great point you made. I agree with you. Regulation is the biggest hurdle. But the thing is that we need to grow up also. There is a book called The Principle of Financial Market Infrastructure, published by CPMI, the Committee for Market Infrastructure of BIS, and it has 24 rules. And these 24 rules are what you have to map out if you're a developer for a new payment system in order to get regulated approval, or at least a no action kind of attitude from the regulator. And this is what happened to Libra. They stormed ahead with Libra 1.0, didn't read the book or didn't want to read the book, and then they had to pivot to Libra 2.0, which maps out those rules. So I'm trying to say that to some extent, the regulator has put out the rule of the game in terms of resilience, risk, reliability of those rules for kind of new infrastructure. And the second point, I strike an optimistic note here because I had the opportunity to be in some of those meetings. The regulator likes the resilience that comes with peer-to-peer, Byzantine fault tolerant distributed system. Why? Because you can't get 100 million that disappears, goes to Bangladesh Central Bank in a peer-to-peer model that runs on state machine governance, right? So they do understand that in the research department. The problem, though, is that for our developers to kind of have the patience and also to accept that the rules of the game to go to that level of trillions of dollars of movement and not billions of dollars, which is small fish, which is DeFi today. If you want to go to the trillions, you need to apply the rule of the CPMI. I encourage you to read it. I've read it. It's pretty boring, but it's very useful to further your product.
Not a
Yes.
good way to sell in that read, by the way. Oh, I encourage you to read it, but it's kind of boring. I joke, but it is an important piece. So, Irina, I know you've got a comment, and then Alex, I see you there too. So,
you know,
I got, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna have to drop off. So let me make my comment because I have to go.
And then
to
drop
another...
your URL so everyone knows where to find you if they don't already. So go ahead.
All right. So the way I see it is that regulators all over the world supposed to represent the interest of the people. The regulator's job is not to represent the interest of the banks, but because of 700 years of banking squashed what the people want, most of the regulation that you have today is protecting the banks. It's in the United States, it's 60,000 pages of Sarbanes-Oxley and other rules that dictate what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And if you read, most of it prevents the person who earns $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a year from participating in almost anything that creates value for them. So most of these laws were written 100 years ago. So the issue with fintech, with DeFi, with all the stuff that we're talking about, is that when you sit down with regulators and you explain to them what you're trying to do, you show them how you can use in an effective way, deliver 6, 7, 8% to the end user in interest, and they actually side with you. And as an example, Celsius is one of the first to file, to register with the FCA under the new rules. Celsius is the first to file for a license in Australia under the new rules. And all these things are driven by the fact that the regulator is the one who realizes, oh my gosh, there is another way. And when they see that what banks really do is banks make sure that they can pay the dividends to the shareholders. That's all they care about. And that has nothing to do with the people, with the 7.5 billion people on this planet who actually, again, give most of their day to deliver the few dollars as deposits, which they get nothing on. They get zero interest on. And then the banks squeeze all the value out of that money by earning money on money and delivering that as stock buybacks or dividends. So the regulators look at it and say, enough is enough. And in many countries, especially the socialist countries, they know they cannot force the banks to pay more in interest because of the mountain of debt that is out there, $100 trillion worth of debt that needs to be refinanced. But at the same time, they are very encouraging to companies that are providing other solutions.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to
Thank you, Alex.
here. You can reach me on alex@mashinsky.com. That's my email, and www.celsius.network. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alex. Irina, go ahead and add that additional point if you had it. And then Benjamin and Francos, I want to make sure you guys get a chance. I know you both have backgrounds in this space as well, but I don't want to focus too much more on this because I think there's some bigger topics we want to get to, but I want to make sure the three of you each get a chance. Or Damien, I want to make sure you guys get a chance to comment, so go ahead.
So through my experience, basically what I've seen is that regulators do understand that they do want, however, they're not really putting their foot forward and actually implementing that. And I really do think it's because of a lot of misinformation that exists out there and a lot of companies misrepresenting themselves in a way to where, you know, you have to go and catch them. A lot of blockchain is not a clean and clear word that communicates the values that it really should. And I think it is because of kind of how misleading it has been, and probably because it grew up in a gray area, right? When I started in the industry, 7, 8 years ago, the biggest question was, will Bitcoin be illegal, right? Like, is it like, the assumption was that it's going to be illegal and it's a dangerous thing to be involved with. And so remember, there was no blockchain before, right? It was just a Bitcoin. And so we kind of come from this area of, though it's supposed to be transparent, but a lot of it is not transparent. The reality of our industry is that there's a lot of fake decentralized platforms who are not, and you see the regulators, they see it, the consumers, they see it, and so it creates that bottleneck. And so I agree with all those statements. The only thing that I want to add is I think that because we say that we must be transparent, we bring transparency, I think we need to lead by actually being transparent and encouraging the regulators to not be scared, right? To not be concerned that if they will provide the regulatory infrastructure for blockchain companies, right, they will that if they integrate it into their systems, which still hasn't been done, they won't attract this really questionable people from all over the world.
Well, and to that point, right, I think this was the issue with the early days of the internet and any kind of new transformative technology. And for our audience, both investors and entrepreneurs, the thing to remember here that we're all communicating is not just the idea that digitization has happened so quickly, but it's also that this stuff doesn't happen in a day, right? Change like this does not happen instantaneously. It feels like it in some cases because of how fast things move. It feels like we just went through 10 years in a week, but nonetheless, these things take time. When we talk about a lot of what's, just to summarize real quick, and then Diego, I'm coming to you, is to summarize what we just talked about around regulation. These are fundamental shifts, both in infrastructure and mindset. Those are something that's not, those are both things that are not going to happen overnight, let alone in a few years. And that mindset will trickle down to from the government all the way down to us as end users, and from the infrastructure and technology, that affects everything. I mean, think about it from a financial perspective and everything you do on a transactional basis in your life in one day, it affects everything. That's going to take years, and that's good. And also an opportunity from a good standpoint as entrepreneurs, you got a lot to build in here, and it's something to be thinking about as you really go into to Irina's point, and also Jean-Marc's and Alex has mentioned before, is educate, continue to be transparent, continue to educate and make this seamless, not a show, but actually seamless, and show people how they can get into this area very easily, to Jean-Marc's previous points. Investors, learn and understand where the opportunity areas are, because they're not everywhere. There's some better now than later. Some are long, some are short. And we're going to get to those areas of opportunity here in just a moment, as Jean-Marc called some of them out around the infrastructure layer, as did Alex and Irina around decentralized finance, and Diego and Damien have also around digital assets. So Benjamin and Frankos, I'm going to come to you next. But before we do, Diego, I want to come to you. You have been focused in this area around digital assets, and you've created something very unique, specific to the country of Italy. And I want to touch on what's happening in Italy right now around fintech and blockchain. So not so much on the macro, I want to come micro, because Italy and Europe in general, Jean-Marc called this out on a very awesome and exciting read, which is also a boring document. There's a lot of things happening that you need to be reading about. Jean-Marc, I tease, but it is really something everyone should read. The EU, the general area of Europe right now, is very heavily focused on where digital payments and assets go. So from you being on the ground, what's happening there? Where are some of the opportunities that investors should be paying attention to, and maybe even entrepreneurs building? But give us the landscape of what's happening in Italy.
Yeah, the landscape in Italy is really clear right now, because we see a lot of growth of fintech startup, a lot of growth of digital payment startup focused on this specific sector. Italy 3 months ago was the epicenter of the coronavirus, and so we saw that a lot of companies, a lot of startups need to change. So, for example, in Italy, 6 months ago, it was impossible to working from home, even from startup, even from other company. In just few months, all the startup need to adapt. And so it was something remarkable for an old-fashioned country like Italy. So it was something that personally, I wasn't expected by myself, because as I said, it was a big shock for us, for all the industry, for all the economy, and so, but we were able to adapt. To get into the fintech space, in the fintech area, it was interesting to see a lot of company, a lot of startups in the last 3-4 months decided to pivot it to get more focus on this industry, and also it was interesting to notice that a lot of company decided to do something different. For example, now the app that is available in Italy to track the people affected by coronavirus or to monitor the situation was created by a company that 3 months ago was a game company. So this company saw this opportunity and decided to take this opportunity. And from a fintech point of view, we saw a lot of new investment in the company that are now focused on digital payments. For example, we have 2 or 3 companies that raised money in the last 2 months. So even during this crisis, this very specific situation. And for the cryptocurrency industry, we saw, for example, our exchange, we saw a lot of interest from people that doesn't know what the Bitcoin was 6 months ago. So now there are a lot of new interest in this kind of economic, of this opportunity. And we also see a lot of new interest in this DeFi, CeFi services, because right now the situation in Italy from an economic point of view is really, really tough. It's hard. And so there are people that are now looking for new opportunities, because banks, the interest in the banks are close to zero. It's really hard to get a loan, and so people are looking for different solutions. And for me, for us, this is a great opportunity for fintech startup and for blockchain company that are operating in this sector.
Sounds amazing. I mean, I think you're painting the right picture of what we're all starting to see in Europe and in Italy as well. And thank you very much, Diego, for sharing that. Benjamin and Frankos, I want to come to you both. I know you may have some comments on a few of the things that we've mentioned, and have some very, very distinguished background in these spaces, as I've been told, and also done a little research on. Would love to get a couple minutes summary on kind of everything we've talked about, or where you see fintech and blockchain, really its current state right now. And then to everyone else, we're going to come around to the lightning round of this show, where we're going to start to dive into those investments, what we need to be looking at as investors, and where the areas of opportunity are to further everyone's points. So Frankos, I want to start with you, and I apologize if I've mispronounced your name, but I do want to come to you first.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, so I fully agree with what you said before about internet and the link with blockchain. I think what we are doing now is creating a history, and it's by combining technologies which are not fully connected yet. And I think what you said about regulators is very true, because I think we don't know exactly what will happen, and I think it's what I call the collective intelligence of the market. So all of us that will create this good final structure of the market. So that's what we are working on with Damien. My approach is very mathematical. I think mathematics will become a key player in finance and banking in the coming years. It's already started, I would say 20 years ago, with the prime brokers, which have designed very sophisticated value at risk systems. And I think one of the big challenges we have, and we are working with Damien and Benjamin on it, is to bring to the people what was done for only a few very powerful investors in the past. And I think that's really the beauty of technology, that it gives access to the people what was first designed for only a few. And I think that's really part of the American dream. I think America has a key role to play in that field. And personally, I think it's very important America keeps the spirit of the founders, and that was to say that they are bringing these power to the people all over the world. I think by combining, all the technologies we have today, we can really create something very powerful and make a lot of money, because basically we can create a lot of wealth all over the financial marketplace.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the points Alex is making, right, is opening up this world of financial inclusion and really letting people invest in diverse how they do make income, make investments, whether passive or active. We talked a little bit on our previous episode of VCTV today around the idea of fractional employment and where those opportunities may lie for us each. And I think that is something that's going to be coming ahead. And, fintech and just the big financial industry in general plays a very important role on that as well. And Benjamin, I want to make sure you get a chance to say something as well. Do you have any further comments on this? Just a quick minute or two before we get to the big lightning round here. All right, Benjamin, we're going to come back to you. No stress as well. But everyone, I want to dive into just a few quick questions again as we come up to the top of the hour. I want to be conscious of everyone's time. And Irina, I want to start with you. Is where are you seeing blockchain, and focusing on that for a minute? Where are you seeing that interlace with other technologies and maybe new industries as well? As there's a lot happening in this space right now.
Right. Well, space industry, it's not a financial technology, but interestingly, that financial technology, blockchain application for space solutions is one of the important things that we really need to do as we are getting more companies getting into space. And basically what's happening is they're servicing companies, right? So as you're, let's think about it like this. You have a gas station and space, and they need to be able to service many different kind of clients, right? In space, or it's a 3D printing parts station, and so on. I mean, we could talk about space for hours, right? But
we've done so we won't go into that today, but yeah.
Right. And so those applications are very, very important. So we need, for example, a payment system that is outside of outside of Earth and is created specifically for outer space payments. Of course, supply chain is extremely important because we just had last year a rocket blew up and it cost I think $1.3 billion, and it blew up because the supplier on a low level faked the metal that they were supposed to provide. Okay, that's all. Just poof, and that's the thing where the opportunities for blockchain come in, because mistakes are so expensive in a space industry. Another thing that I think that's important is application of blockchain in creating global securities exchange, because right now going public is extremely expensive. It is unbelievably expensive, and it's completely segregated. It's not expensive because somebody wants to just take all your money. It's because the processes are built on an old system, and blockchain technology allows us to shrink that, give better control to regulators, better understanding, and therefore democratizing ability for us to take this much cheaper offering, right? And then put it into global depository receipt and offer it all over the world. And I think that is what's going to change the world, because we need to be able to give opportunities to entrepreneurs to all over the world to share their experiences and to share their goals with investors all over the world. And this whole thing with unsophisticated investor, oh gosh, I just want to go raw.
We're not, right? Yeah, don't worry, we're not going to get into that today. We're just focused on the opportunities. So
right.
I'm
and
with
so
you.
I think, right. So opportunity is integration of traditional financial markets. So in blockchain, with blockchain technology, as well as space integration.
I love it. And Diego, I know you're going to have to head out here in a few minutes as we're coming to that top of the hour. I want to make sure you get a chance, throw in your areas of opportunities as investors are listening and entrepreneurs. Where should they be paying attention to? Where are you seeing the opportunity for them to be building in, as well as there's a lot happening and a lot of places to pay attention?
Yeah, I think I agree with Irina. I think that blockchain can give a great contribution to the financial industry. I came from traditional finance, so I see a lot of opportunity. Unfortunately, right now, also to coming back to the regulator point of view, in Italy, regulators are not so sophisticated like in other countries, like in the UK or in the US. So it's not easy for them to try to understand what we are trying to bring to the table. So, as I said, I think that there are a lot of opportunity between traditional finance and integration with blockchain technology. The problem is that sometimes it's not so easy for them to understand where these opportunities are. So we, as one of the players, as one of the company into this space, we are trying to bring our expertise to the regulator, because the good thing is that 3-4 years ago, the situation was completely different. Now they are ready to understand, they are ready to, they are more active. And so this is a good thing, at least. And so we are trying to bring to them this new kind of opportunity. But as I said, it's really important to try to bring to them this new opportunity, and to be able for them to understand.
It's a collaboration effort. I mean, we as I mentioned earlier, right? Like this, some people have been working in governments, corporates have been working on this for years. They're just not talking about it, and that's okay. But now it's continuing that collaboration together. I mean, we talked about this on a previous episode in the DeFi space, decentralized finance. You know, we saw a very early situation where someone got hacked, and the entire surrounding community jumped in, tried to figure it all out, try to figure out what happened, a solution, patched it, and move forward. Now, that can't happen at scale all the time, but to show that type of collaboration, we need more of that, which will lead to more education, which will lead to regulation and how that may change, and then can also lead to opportunity of adoption as well, whether that's at the application layer or transactions. And I know Jean-Marc and Francos are going to challenge me on that, and that's what I want. So Diego, thank you. Jean-Marc, same to you. What else are you seeing as areas of opportunity in these spaces?
Yeah, so I would agree with Irina about the supply chain management and trade finance. There's a massive issue of fraud and double spend in cargoes of crude offshore Singapore. I mean, there's big stories of that could be reconciled with the golden source of truth for the trade. But then the one that really dear to my heart, and I've been working on it for some time, on deep involved in research through one of the foundation I've created in Lausanne at the EPFL, it's about distributed intelligence. Because what distributed finance is moving cash from Bob to Alice. It's great, but frankly, it's a balanced move from an encrypted holder to another authorized holder. It's pretty basic, right? In terms of if you talk to a scientist in artificial intelligence. What's interesting is distribute intelligence. That means use computing power and decentralized computing to move also models, compute power, and create services and solutions at the edge, in a car, in a hospital, inference at the edge, and have the blockchain to be the enforcer of the collaboration between the parties to develop intelligence at the edge. That is the ultimate, for me, objective, is to blend AI and distributed computing, aka blockchain and encryption, into edge services in the kind of next 5-10 years.
Well, and what's interesting about that is distributed computing has been around for several years and actually started because of this effort around the scientific community. So it's now coming back to light, just as the idea of ledgers, and just as the idea of database, just the idea of all of this stuff has been around for some time. And as I mentioned, it doesn't happen overnight. So here we are 20, 30 years later, it's now coming to scale and at a rapid pace Jean-Marc, I think you're focused on an exciting category. I'm also there of interest as well, and that's that shared mind share as well and insights. Frankos, I want to come to you. Same question. Where are you seeing the areas of opportunity coming from your background in banking and just investment in general? Where are you seeing the areas of opportunity today?
Well, I fully agree with Jean-Marc. My focus is on artificial intelligence, and the more you work on artificial intelligence, the more you see that the collective intelligence comes from the what you call the decentralization of all the investment and economic decisions. So I think what we are doing is really creating the dream of all the big economists like Friedrich von Hayek or Tocqueville or the Jefferson and all the founding father, which is to say that the more decentralized all the decision in the economic and political sphere, the better the final allocation. So we had a call with Algorand last week with Damien, and they were telling us they can now settle some trades in, for instance, in tokens for just 1 cent, and it can even create what they call an atomic swap, to create a legal loan, for instance, for just the same price. So this basically can give access. For instance, there are 2 billion people in the world that do not have access to banking in Africa or India or South America, and Damien has big contact in Mexico. So this is very concrete. These people with these technologies could get access to the same financial strengths that you have in the States. In Europe, we are a bit less happy than you because our financial system is a bit more dangerous, but we are still much more better than in Africa. So, and I think that's a big challenge for all of us is to combine these technologies. I would quote one of my favorite French poets called Baudelaire and say, from the unknown, we will find the new. And that's exactly, I think, what we are doing.
Absolutely beautiful quote to end on there. And everyone, I want to come to one final question before our closing thoughts, and I think this one's very important. Maybe the biggest summary of all we've talked about today is, as investors, we look at companies in this space on a regular basis, but we're also following what's happening in the news and what's happening generally with companies. And there's been needless to say, some issues around auditing, around security, around privacy. And as it is early days for a lot of this stuff, I don't want to call out certain projects because they are a good example. They're not the standard, but auditing is becoming more of a conversation around fintech and around decentralized finance. As investors, what piece of advice, maybe one piece of advice, do you have for those that are listening on diligence, on what investors should be thinking about as they are diligencing a company? Because you can't protect everything, right? You can't control what the company does or doesn't do at every point in its stage. But as you go through that diligence, as you sit on the board or as you sit as an investor, how can you continue to monitor or really dive into diligence to make sure that things are in place necessary around auditing, around regulation, and some kind of security around code, so we can avoid some of these, again, early day mistakes as investors and make sure we're placing the right bets. So Jean-Marc, I see you.
Yeah, for me,
very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. There's two things I focus on as an investor when I look at an exciting startup like this. Is I assume it's a great team. I assume it's a great concept. I assume all that is great, but I want to see productization potential, and I want to see execution ability. And there's so many opportunities these days that you really need to use those as the differentiator between a good and an extremely good project and a great project.
Absolutely. Frankos, to you as well.
Yeah, for me, I think we had the European crisis and with Greece, and we have an Italian on the school, so we know that there is a big financial risk even in Europe at the moment. And I think with blockchain and all these new technologies, we can create a risk-free assets, especially if we plug them to the US financial system, which is so strong and resistant. For instance, if you take the mega ETF listed in New York, they give you access to the whole world investment with absolutely no counterpart risk. So I think that's a big challenge. It will be to to use blockchain to create at a low cost some investment which are completely risk-free. And I think that can be done, and that's what we will do with Hamilton.
Wonderful. Irina, one piece of advice around diligence.
I think the most important thing is to understand whether it is centralized or decentralized application, and whether they understand the difference. Often a lot of investments made in those that are misleading, and I think that's kind of, you must as an investor find your comfort zone, whether it is going to be centralized application, which has a space, and whether also it is applicable to the solutions. So if the company is saying we're going to build the solutions, decentralized solutions, but it is not a decentralized platform, and they don't even know what anchoring is, and they do not have a backup in anchoring, it just then feasibility doesn't really work. So I think that that's my biggest advice, is to really identify whether it is centralized and decentralized. And also, if it is a company that provides, kind of builds on other blockchains, right? Because you can be a blockchain company creating blockchain solutions, or you can be a kind of a middle part integrator. At that point, I think that the important thing to understand whether they have ability to pivot from blockchain to blockchain, and whether they can be blockchain agnostic, especially when they're building solutions for financial technology.
Absolutely. Interoperability is a key topic we've talked about, but going beyond that, just being able to work and move and shift as this industry changes very rapidly as well. And one additional topic I'll add as well is just team. Look at the team very heavily, and look at the technical team and their experience at the technical level. If they're building in financial services, I think it's obvious, but I'll state it. Make sure they have some financial services background as engineers and as a technical talent. If they're building in this area of, we'll just call it in blockchain and decentralization, see where they're focused in, see what they've built before, where have their projects gone in the past, and do they have experience in this industry? And again, really take the time to learn from them and talk with them, not just the key management team as well, as that is going to be a foundational piece. If things go wrong, that's going to be one of the biggest things you're going to want to talk to. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. We're here at Closing Thoughts at the top of the hour. Irina, I want to start with you. Closing thoughts on anything you have quickly, and then also where can everyone find you online?
Yes, thank you. My closing thoughts is keep on building. If you're an entrepreneur, look at how this technology and other innovations as well progress your business. Or if you want to build solutions, see how it applies to, if you're an investor, make sure you do the proper due diligence, do apply all the advices that we just gave you. If you've never invested in something before, if this is a new investment opportunity for you, reach out. We're here, we're a community, we're here to help, and we want to make sure that we empower each other. So, there's no bad questions. Ask questions. Like you said, look at the team. And I think that most importantly, we now live in the era of co-creation. And so you don't need to hide what you're building there and think that you're going to go and do something great just because it's your little piece. Reach out. The bigger network you can have of people that can help you with advice and with solutions, the more integrations you can do, the better. You can find me anywhere. If you just Google Irina Lichf, you will find me, or Crypto Superwoman. I'm super responsive. And I'm always available and happy to help, and on whichever way I can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Frankos, I'm going to come to you. Same closing thoughts, and thank you so much for joining in on today's discussion. And where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, so my closing thought is invest globally, but I think it's important to be anchored, as you were thinking, in a very strong financial and infrastructure, so especially the United States, clearly, also UK. But I think with blockchain, we can link this and give access to these very powerful financial systems to all over the world. And that's the way I see it. I think it's not creating another infrastructure globally, which will challenge the existing infrastructure, but it's building on the strengths which already exist and bringing it to a lot of new people. So that's really the way we see it. So you can find us on our website. So it's Hamilton.network on the web, and you have the access to the whole team on that page.
Wonderful. We'll share that out with the community afterwards, along with Jean-Marc. Closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you?
Yeah, very quickly. So I think this right now we're in a big hitting with big headwinds, right? With the COVID, it's a terrible crisis, and it has clearly slowed down a bit the investment flow, and a lot of investors are looking at what they have in their stable and making sure it's all okay. And then there's a little bit of slowness there. However, I think it's the best time ever to invest from a VC point of view, because you're looking at a 7 average year life investment, right? And if you believe in this theme of Web 3.0 and what I call Fintech 2.0, which is distributed Fintech on the infrastructure level, this takes time to get to full production and monetization. So this is the right time, I think, to look at selecting your bets into the winners of the future. And there'll be some unicorns here in the making, and hopefully some of us in this call will be involved with them. I can be found otherwise on LinkedIn. Is probably the best way to get me if you want to reach out.
Wonderful. Jean-Marc, Francos, Irina, thank you all as well to our previous guests who had to leave early today. But thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights on this industry that changes every 30 seconds. Nonetheless, I think we spoke very, very well at what's happening on a macro level to keep ahead of those suddenly changing trends. Nonetheless, a lot of what we talked about is here to stay, and here to stay for a long time, to Jean-Marc's comments. To your audience, thank you so much for joining in. If you like what you heard, make sure you give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button. Thank you, Elena, to the entire LA Token team for bringing VCTV to your screen everywhere in the world and bringing all of us together. Again, guests, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Jean-Marc. Appreciate it as well. The links and some of the comments we talked about today, I'll make sure to include in the show notes. I'm Kyle Licott, your host. I'll be back here tomorrow with Elena, with LA Token and the team to talk to you about what's happening on a global scale around fundraising in general. We've talked a lot about a lot of topics, talked a lot about things from an entrepreneurial level. Let's bring it all together and make sure you know where to go, where to invest, and what to do, not to do, everywhere and anywhere. I'm Kyle Licott, your host.